Hey, it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is the place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual. I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So, if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon right now. So, have you ever had some weird and wonderful questions come up in your head about asexuality? And maybe you're really afraid to ask them because you're either afraid of what people might think of you if you ask those questions, you think the question's a silly question, or you just are really shy about it. If that sounds like you, then stay tuned because I'm going to be answering a lot of asexual questions for asexual pride, as this is Pride Month, and you'll want to stick around so you hear the answers to the questions you've been dying to ask, but probably were afraid to. First of all, if you don't know who I am, I'm Sandra Bellamy, author of this awesome Asexual Perspectives book on Amazon. It is Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month next month. That's in July. So I'll be reading from this book then. But right now, yes. So, first of all, what is asexuality? Just in case you're new to the term, asexuality is a sexual orientation that is the lack of sexual attraction. This means that, in broad terms, we don't get the need, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. It's based on a lack of sexual attraction. A lack can mean you haven't got any of it, or a lack can mean less of than the usual. So if you've got a lack of sexual attraction, complete lack of it, you'd be a pure asexual. You don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever. And if you are experiencing sexual attraction, but only in very limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or you're experiencing enough, or you're experiencing it, but not enough to want to act on it, you'd be then looking at the grey end of the asexual spectrum. So asexuality is a sexual orientation, but it's also a spectrum of asexual identities. And the grey asexual spectrum encompasses so many different things. So I get asked questions like, if I'm looking at porn and I like porn and I masturbate to porn, can I still be asexual? Well, usually with asexuality, if any asexuals have a drive, for example, for sex, the drive for sex is not usually aimed at anyone. Some asexuals do still masturbate for sexual release, for pleasure, for wanting to sleep. Other asexuals, they like watching porn. They like watching porn to get off to, basically, to help them to be aroused, to release sexual tension. So just because someone is asexual doesn't mean to say they've got things wrong with them in their genitalia. It just means that they lack sexual attraction. They either lack it fully or they have little to no sexual attraction. So they either lack sexual attraction completely or it's little to no because it's low, infrequent, rare, specific circumstances only. It's not the usual sexual attraction. Okay, because that's why it gets very confusing. And the sexual end of the spectrum, some people on the more sexual end of the spectrum, the grey asexuals, for example, not the pure asexuals, some of those people, they like the fantasy of sex, but not the reality of having it with someone in real life. They can sometimes like watching it or reading about it. They can like looking at movies and watching sexual stuff without actually wanting to participate in it themselves. So usually this is people who are more on the grey end of the asexual spectrum in my personal experience. Those asexuals that are pure asexuals, often sex repulsed asexuals would fall under the category of pure asexuals because usually in the majority of cases that I've come across, those that lack sexual attraction completely are often the sex repulsed asexuals. But asexuals come in all different forms, shapes, and sizes. Some asexuals are completely sex repulsed. The idea of sex absolutely just disgusts them. And other asexuals are just, like indifferent to sex. They're not interested in sex, but they're not that bothered. But they're okay if other people do it, for example. And so yeah, that some asexuals are neutral. They're not bothered about whether they have sex or not. Sex, they can take it or leave it. Some asexuals will have sex, some enjoy it as an activity to do. So just because someone lacks a sexual attraction towards others doesn't mean to say they still don't want to partake in the act. But there is still a large percentage of asexuals. I would say an estimate from my knowledge to be about 70% of asexuals are probably not interested in sex, whereas 30% would probably do it or participate in it or have it. But it's hard because if you don't know you're asexual, you might be a person who's having sex, but really not be into it and not understand why everyone in the world wants sex. I was in this position years ago where I didn't know I was asexual and sexual orientation. I wasn't really bothered about sex. I would have rather have done the washing up, and I hate washing up. When my ex used to try and instigate sex, I just like really was not wanting it. I wasn't when I had it, it was consensual, but I wasn't into it. You know what I mean? He's really wanting it. I'm thinking I just want to stay and do the washing up and listen to my music in my headphones and stuff like that. So, but I was good at doing the sex with him. He was very good at sex, my last ex, and I've had bad sex as well. So there's a myth that goes around that every asexual who doesn't like sex has had some bad experience, traumatic experience, and that's why they don't like sex, and that's why they can't get good sex and all the rest of it, because they haven't had a good guy or having a guy who can do good sex, right? But actually, I have had some sexual trauma, but that's not what stopped me having sex. I had sex after I had sexual trauma, and the last time I had sex, I should say the last person I had sex with, which was over a number of years because I was in a long-term relationship with them. We didn't have it that often, though, compared to the majority of people in the world. I'm guessing that majority of heterosexuals, because I thought I was heterosexual for years, there was long periods when we didn't do that. And I didn't know I was asexual at the time, but looking back, I clearly was, because I still didn't think of him like, oh, I want to have sex with you. But he was a highly sexual guy, really, and super into sex type stuff. But he was good at sex. I didn't have a bad experience with him sexually at all, And so when I say at all, there was one time, like, he dressed me up in a Santa outfit, and it was like, ugh. Right, the sex wasn't bad, but I would have rather have, like, worn the outfit for myself because I looked nice, not because he wanted to have sex with me in it, and that's what he bought it me for, is a Santa outfit. So that was a pretty gross experience for me in terms of, like, being someone I'm not, rather than actually wearing a dress because I'm cute, you know what I mean? So that was quite hard. And some question I get asked is, do asexuals participate in BDSM? Like, I'm personally very BDSM repulsed. It's hard for me because I don't have a submissive personality, I would say. So in terms of domination and submission, I'm not a submissive person, but I'm not that dominant enough to be in a type of dom sub relationship thing. I like a lot of equality. I do like the guy to make the first move. I do like the guy to message me first, to instigate messages, to keep conversation going, to arrange a video date, to arrange an in-person date. I like all the guy taking charge of that and being very proactive and pushing that forward, and so I really get kind of cringed out by BDSM stuff personally. But there are some asexuals that like BDSM. There's a group called Non-Vanilla Aces on Facebook. I think I'm still in that. As far as I know, it's still going, but I don't usually go in there because for me, it's not that great, because I don't personally like BDSM. But I went in there because I thought, oh, I've got great areas. So non-vanilla aces, I thought, meant, people who've got grey areas. Mine is kissing and dancing, because I've got some sexual behavior the way I like to kiss and dance, but I have no desire to have sex whatsoever. So I thought this will be a group where I fit in, but no, because it's got people doing role plays in there, people talking about, like, tying things up and BDSM stuff, and some people who are asexual, they like the spanking, but they don't actually want the intercourse. They like being tied up, but don't want the intercourse. So they can do, like, BDSM stuff without actually having sex. So some asexuals do like that. I find it difficult because a lot of asexual guys I come across still like porn, and I personally detest porn. I think it exploits women's bodies. I think there's absolutely no need for it. It's very unrealistic, and it just disgusts me because I don't like nudity. Right? I'm one of the few asexuals I know in the world that doesn't like nudity. I'm nudity repulsed and pregnancy repulsed, and that's quite a lot. So in terms of like arousal, like what is arousal? Arousal is a feeling in your genitalia. And with asexuals, it doesn't have to be linked to anyone or anything. So I get aroused sometimes and I have high levels of arousal sometimes, but it doesn't make me want to have sex. It doesn't make me think about any guy and that I want sex with him. It just means it's a feeling in my genitalia by some act that the person's done with me, where it's kissing or touching me in some way. I usually don't like to be touched in sexual places. I have rules about that. And so it's very important as well when you do date, if you're dating heterosexuals, for example, or potentially getting into a relationship, that you do have strict boundaries where that person's allowed to touch you and things like that, because otherwise you might get very uncomfortable and they need to respect those boundaries and wishes as well. So another thing is, I got a question on my channel recently that was like, if someone wants sex, can they still be asexual? Well, you'd have to ask yourself where that want comes from. Because asexual is a lack of sexual attraction. Sexual attraction is a need, urge, excuse me, or want for partner sexual intercourse. Oh, excuse me. And if you are if you experience sexual attraction, you do have a need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse. If you don't experience sexual attraction, you don't have a need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse. So with asexuals, you're not holding yourself back if you don't want sex because you naturally don't want it. Whereas heterosexuals, for example, excuse me, they usually have this innate need, desire, and urge for sex. So they will usually see a person, they'll be like, oh, I really want to have sex with that person. And so they look at someone and they want to have sex. It's an innate need. Now, an asexual could say they want sex in the sense that if they were on the more grey end of the asexual spectrum, for example, so they do experience sexual attraction in the limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they experience it, but maybe not in the usual way. I was going to say not enough to want to act on it, but if someone actually thinks in their head they want sex, then they might want to act on it. But you might be thinking, why would an asexual person do that? Like, I'm trying to say that if it's someone who's more grey asexual than a pure asexual, they do get sexual attraction, but only in certain circumstances. So it might be one of those circumstances where they do want sex. Or an asexual could be curious. An asexual could decide that they are curious about trying sex. They want to know, like, what is the feeling like? What is it like to have that? How does it feel in the body? And they might just want to experience like that. I am glad I'm sex free. I've been sex free for like, I would say, well, since October 2011, and we're now in June 2023. So a long time, basically 12 years, give or take a few months. And I don't regret not having sex at the moment, and for all those years, I'm very happy not to have sex. But if I'd never tried sex, maybe I would be curious and thinking, oh, I wish I tried it to see what it was like. I don't know if I knew I was asexual years ago, maybe I just would never have had sex in my life. But I think in my mind that I would still have liked to have tried it because I would have been curious to see what it felt like and what happened during it. And maybe it's because I have done that quite a bit in my life. I've just so used to have had that experience now that it'd be weird if I hadn't had that experience. But some asexuals are curious to try. I know there was one asexual on acebook.net, and that's ace-book.net, which is a dating site and social networking site for asexuals. And they went to have sex, but they specifically got someone to meet them in a hotel room to do it, because they wanted to try the experience, and they were worried that some people might think that they're not asexual if they try it. But trying sex is not the be all and end all of life. It's not the be all and end all of where you're asexual or not. Just because you try sex doesn't mean to say you're not asexual. Asexual people can have sex if they want to, and they're usually fully capable of it. But most don't want to because they don't look at someone and think, I want sex with them. So for some asexuals, if they don't want sex, it would be quite repulsive to think about actually having sex with another person. Whereas if it's an asexual that maybe experiences a lot of aesthetic attraction, a lot of romantic attraction, a lot of other attractions, but they don't experience sexual attraction, but they might just think, well, it might be a pleasurable act. It might be a nice thing to try. They may just want to please their partner, for example. So they may do that with them. And just because someone's curious to try sex doesn't mean to say they're asexual. If I had sex tomorrow, which I don't intend to do, and I can't see myself having sex again, but if I did, it wouldn't mean that I'm not asexual anymore. It would just mean that I'm having a sexual experience as an asexual person, and that I'm still not thinking I want to have sex with this person as an innate need. Want as in a consensual, I'm okay with that, is very different to I really want it. I really want it in terms of sexual attraction is the actual innate need within you. Like, I can't help but want sex with that person. That type of feeling and thought and being. Whereas an asexual who doesn't experience sexual attraction, who's having sex, say you're in a relationship with a heterosexual, it might just be like that person thinks it's a fun thing to do. I like to do fun things with them. It's an activity we can do together. I'm up for it. I'm okay about that if they are, right? Other asexuals are just complete sex repulsed like myself, and they really want to find a relationship without sex. Finding a relationship without sex is very hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's very difficult. It doesn't mean to say it can't be done. There are a lot of people on dating sites that do want sex, that are really into hookups. I get guys after me just to hook up for kissing because I'm not interested in sex. I put about kissing, and they're like, "Oh, well, we both like kissing. Let's go and do that." Like a hobby type thing. I like a hobby, like a favorite hobby, but in a relationship, serious committed relationship, ideally, because I feel I can let myself go more then. So yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, okay, we have kissing in common, but kissing is my ultimate intimacy, whereas sex is yours. So I'm doing something with you that's not that intimate to you compared to how it is for me. And it's kind of like robbing me of my intimacy if I let them. Do you know what I mean? In that way. And instead of reserving it for someone special. And so that's kind of hard. And it is difficult to find someone who doesn't want sex. But there are people that doesn't want sex. There are thousands of asexuals around the globe. There are more aromantic asexuals than romantic ones. So aromantic or aromantic, as some people pronounce it, are those that lack romantic attraction. And if they're asexual, they lack sexual attraction and romantic attraction. This makes it harder to find someone asexual for a relationship, because the majority of aromantics don't desire a relationship at all because they don't need one. They're happy on their own. They're not experiencing any romantic attraction. They're not experiencing the need or desire to be in a relationship, and they just rather live on their own and maybe, or live in a community of people, but they'd rather be on their own as a single entity. And they'd rather not get involved in a relationship. They'd rather have just really deep friendships with people, a lot of them. And so that poses a difficulty when you're asexual. There's more asexual women than guys, usually as well. So that's quite hard. So it doesn't mean to say it can't be done, but it's harder. In terms of sexual desire versus sexual attraction, sexual desire is a desire for the sex in and of itself. And there are a few asexuals in the world that have a sex drive. They still have a drive for sex, but it's just not aimed at anyone. A cupiosexual, by the way, in case you didn't know that, is someone who desires a sexual relationship without actually experiencing any sexual attraction. So, yeah. And then you can get cupio romantic, who desires a romantic relationship without actually experiencing romantic attraction. So just because someone is asexual and doesn't experience sexual attraction doesn't mean to say they're not capable of having sex. Someone who's cupio romantic asexual doesn't experience romantic attraction, but doesn't mean to say they can't engage in a romantic relationship. A cupiosexual doesn't experience sexual attraction, but they could still engage in sex. Do you see what I mean? So just because someone doesn't experience that type of attraction doesn't mean to say they can't do action, right? So I could potentially still have sex because I physically can have it in terms of like my body makeup, but I mentally do not want it, and all my body and persona is like, no, you can't do that now. It's just every bit of my being is like, don't do that, right? So, it can happen. And some asexuals do masturbate. They masturbate to relieve tension, to relieve headaches, to de-stress, just for releasing pleasure, because they find it much more pleasurable to pleasure themselves than have someone else do it with them or for them. It's less messy. There's no sexually transmitted diseases usually going to be got from yourself. And, some do have high libidos or sex drives, but they have no desire for the sex itself or no desire for the sex with a specific person. So there are some people called autosexual, which you could find some asexuals being. Autosexual is when the person's sexually attracted to themselves, but not other people. That would be on the grey end of the asexual spectrum, where they experience sexual attraction in very rare circumstances or limited circumstances, if you like, towards themselves, basically. So that's very interesting. And you could get someone who's auto-romantic, so they're romantically attracted to themselves. Usually like not a cupiosexual, sorry. A cupiosexual is someone who desires a sexual relationship despite not experiencing sexual attraction. So a cupiosexual wants sex with someone else. But an autosexual is someone who's sexually attracted to themselves, wants to masturbate and do lots of making love with themselves, basically. They're automatic. It's automatically coming back to them, basically. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very diverse topic, asexuality. There's something called sapiosexual. Some people identify as sapiosexual and asexual. Others don't think they're asexual, they're sapiosexual, but sapiosexual comes under the grey end of the asexual spectrum. So some people don't believe that grey asexuals should be saying they're asexual, because it's, hang on, you're grey asexual, you're not pure asexual. Grey asexuality in of itself is a whole spectrum. But grey asexuality is part of the end of the asexual spectrum before it joins the sexual spectrum, because these people don't experience the usual sexual attraction. They have a lack of the usual sexual attraction. I hope this makes sense to you. And aromantics even have a spectrum in of themselves, ranging from those that are pure aromantic to those who are grey aromantic, experience romantic attraction little, rarely, infrequently, or not enough to want to act on it. And then there's a demi romantics, which are basically only experiencing romantic attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed, maintained, and sustained, usually. And also like a cupioromantic, someone who experiences romantic attraction. Well, they don't experience romantic attraction, sorry, a cupioromantic. They don't experience romantic attraction, but they desire a romantic relationship. So they desire to experience romantic attraction usually, but they don't. Anarch, hi, sorry for being late. I'm baking cookies. You're baking cookies. Oh wow. Interesting. I can't eat, but cookies I can eat, but not cookies. So yes, what is the asexual cake joke? Because some people don't get it. So when I first came to the asexual community, I didn't understand what all the fuss was about to do with food and cake. And there's like a joke, like an insider joke about cake to do with asexuality. It's like, what the hell is it? So if you didn't know, people usually in groups often welcome each other with cake, like a slice of cake or like a gift, like they don't pop through the screen and give the person a piece of cake. It's usually like a picture of cake, although I don't tend to do this in my groups, but I talk about cakes quite a bit in my groups, like ask people what was the latest cake they ate. And so it's to do with the fact that food is usually better than sex, that cake is better than sex, because it gives you a lot of pleasure. Food does usually, it makes you feel great, but you don't have to have sex to get that pleasure and that gratification. I hope that makes sense. I haven't heard about the cake thing, but I have heard about the garlic bread thing. Garlic bread is pretty great. Oh, I can't have bread at all. I'm allergic to wheat, but I haven't heard about that. The cake thing was around when I first joined the asexual community. So there's something which is an asexual unicorn as well. And the reason they say this is because we're very rare and special in that way. There's like not many of us around, so it's like quite unique, and that's what unicorns represent. They represent like being unique, being special, if you like. Not many of them around. As we know, they're meant to be fictitious, but some horses could have extra horns and be a unicorn. I do like unicorns actually. I've got something up on my wall that's like I am an ace unicorn, magical, special, rare, and I give away this poster like electronically for anyone who joins my Asexualise Academy club. Yeah, the garlic bread joke is usually a joke about partners doing something scandalous, and the scandalous thing is bread in bed. Oh. So is that a sexual joke then? Bread in bed. Yeah, I saw someone on one of the dating sites make an analogy similar to that, which was, and also there's this, if we get too sexual, then there's like a bun in the oven, which means you're pregnant, basically. And people make like say it's a fake out. It's a fake out joke, basically. Yeah, there are people that are sexual that do make jokes about genitalia, basically, that are to do with food and stuff. Like I think I saw one that says give me your pie, which I think meant a woman's private parts, which is pretty disgusting to me. But yeah, so can asexuals make sex jokes as well? That's something that people might not know, but some asexuals can make sex jokes, yes, even though they're asexual, because some asexuals, they don't have any like relation to sex if they're not having it, so they can make a joke about it, or they can just make a joke about it anyway. Some asexuals like songs with sexual lyrics in them. I love a lot of songs and a lot of the ones I like are like dance tracks and club tracks and reggaeton and stuff like that. And some of them have highly sexual lyrics, but some of the time I hear something completely different to what's in the lyrics. Like, there's this song that for me is really motivational. I think this is great. It's like taking me higher. But in the song, they mean like take me higher to do with sex. But with me, it's like take me higher as in motivational, as in I'm feeling high right now. And just take me in a euphoric state. So I think it's very interesting how asexual minds works compared to how the general sexual population works. Because I often see different things in lyrics that aren't what it's meant to be, and it's only through repetitive listening and actually taking in the words more and more that I'm like, oh, I think it means something sexual, but I didn't mean that. Anarch, the connection with food and sex is pretty interesting, to be honest, like using a banana to refer to male genitalia or bagels for women. Yeah, I'm not so interested in that. So I'm glad that you find that interesting. I mean, bananas has been around for years with which is like an analogy for a guy's penis, basically. And I've been asked to eat bananas on this channel because I do a lot of food videos on this channel. I hate cooking, but I just put out my videos which people like seeing about what food I'm eating for some reason. And a couple of people asked me to do videos with bananas, which I'm guessing is sexual people, because obviously not everyone who's asexual, not every, I was going to say not everyone that watches this channel is asexual. So of course I get sexuals sometimes asking me to do things. So I don't usually eat bananas. So, but yes, I can guess some people would love to see me eat that because it's like a sexual thing. Oh, right. Yeah. So some asexuals do have kinks and fetishes as well. I personally don't like these things, but some asexuals do. I found quite in terms of kinks, the most how can I put it? The guys that have spoke to me, the most common kink I found for asexuals is feet. Like, I've had some asexual guys saying they basically got an obsession with feet and they like to massage the feet, the stroke the feet, I think kiss the feet and stuff like that. It's mostly massaging it. Um, Anarch, did you know there's a place where bananas are blue and taste like ice cream? It's in England apparently. Oh, they sound like gone off bananas to me. And no, I live in the UK. I live in England. But no, I didn't know where the bananas blue and taste like ice cream. I would say they're gone off bananas if they're in that state. But maybe they're not. So I don't know, because bananas are meant to be yellow. If they're going brown, for example, they've gone off. I can't imagine a blue banana, but I've had some weird things in some really fancy restaurants. Like, I've had some weird coloured things. I've had purple potatoes before. They're very interesting. Um, oh, you're saying that Anarch saying in chat the feet thing is kind of weird. Yeah, so if it's a sexual person and they are having a kink or a fetish to do with feet, often I read up about it because I'm like, what's the difference between an asexual having a foot fetish and a sexual person having a foot fetish? And a sexual person, the if it's a guy, for example, he wants you to actually put your foot in his genitalia and play with his balls, basically. And I'm like, oh my god. By the way, if some people will be getting turned off by this because they don't like sexual talk on this channel, and other because they're sex repulsed. So in this channel, I cover from sex repulsed to no sex at all. To no sex repulsed to people who are fine about sex. John, it's nice to see you. Lots of love to you. I think Anarch might mean blue Java banana. Oh, I haven't heard of that before. I want to look that up now. Java reminds me of the Marvel character, which is Jarvis. It's not the same thing, but I was watching Endgame again the other day and I'm really sad. I thought I'd never watch the Endgame ever again. But then he reminded me of Jarvis that got killed in the first part of Endgame, basically. But it's got nothing to do with bananas. I just randomly thought that thing in my head. That's why I've got quite an asexual brain, because my brain goes off on something that's got absolutely nothing to do with that. Heather, lots of love to you. Nice to see you. Interesting topic about bananas. Yeah. I mean, lots of I haven't blown a kiss to Anarch. Lots of love to Anarch as well. So yeah, I know a lot of I've had a couple of people in one day. I don't know if they just got two different accounts asking me to do a video with banana. Um, but yeah, it's meant to be very sexual. It's meant to be like a guy's penis. I suppose if you're asexual and you want to try sex, then probably a banana is a good thing to like practice putting a condom on if we're talking about stuff like that, getting very sexual now. Because obviously you have to practice safe sex, and a lot of asexuals don't know what the hell they're doing with that. And so you could use a banana to practice on. Rather, like if you're having sex with a guy, sometimes he will take care of that and put the thing on himself, and other times you need to do it for him. But if you're doing it for him, at least you're knowing it's done properly and the air is being expelled, rather than like leaving it up to him. If he doesn't expel the air, you can still get pregnant, for example. Obviously this is more of a sexual topic, but I will be publishing an asexual guide to sex. I've been working on it now for 4 years, but I haven't done it much this month at all because I was doing a lot for Blue Talks. But July, I'm planning to like get stuck into it and to do the final edits. I started the final edits, but I haven't finished the final edits. So yeah, but obviously for asexuals like who've never had sex before, they've got a lot of education to learn. I had one girl a long time ago that I was in communication with, and she's asexual, and she like got pregnant because she didn't really know what she was doing. But I've had other asexuals, sorry, that really worry me. They'll come in chat and they'll be like, oh, I had sex with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. I'm like, did you use protection? Because they seem to think that because they're asexual they can't they either can't get pregnant or they don't think about pregnancy. And it's like, just because you're asexual doesn't mean to say you shouldn't be thinking about things like that. Do you know what I mean? In fact, you should be thinking about it more if you're an asexual that doesn't want kids, for example. So I do get a bit worried about some asexuals. It's like you're taking huge risks. Do you know what I mean? Um, But, like, some asexuals do have sex, but they don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't know what to do with their hands, their arms, which is why I started writing the Asexual Guide to Sex in the first place. But it's ended up turning into a very good relationship education book at the same time as a sex education book. So I have got that to finish. It's a very big book, actually. It's like a reference book that everyone can use for the rest of their life. But even if you don't want sex, it's got loads of relationship advice in there. It's very good. But I need to get it finished. It's such a lengthy book that it's quite hard to edit because I have to do multiple edits over and over again of like the same part till I get it as good as I need it to be. It's not going to be perfect. Nothing's perfect in life. Some people might think the book is too big. Other people will think, like they're glad it's big. So it's you're not going to please everyone, and it's gonna have like loads of stuff to do that in there. But going back to like asexual questions, um, the most common ones that people find difficult is any type of sexual thing they may do. Could that be meaning they're not asexual? But I always think that they have to think about the reasoning behind why they're doing that sexual thing. Is it because they do experience sexual attraction? They look at someone and think, I really want sex with that person. Or is it just because they're curious to know more, or because they are pleasing their partner, or they really couldn't care less? It doesn't affect them. You've got to ask why. Years ago, though, most of the time, asexuality was known as a sexual orientation that's a complete lack of sexual attraction. So some people who are like older asexuals, for example, they really found it difficult to accept asexuality growing in terms of a spectrum, because years ago, from my understanding on asexuality.org, for example, there would be asexuals that are pure asexuals, then there would be great asexuals, and they would be like split, and they would always be separate. So it seems like it's in more modern recent times that the grey sexuals, or grey asexuals, are part of the asexual spectrum, the more sexual part. So they're not pure asexuals at the end of the day, because they do experience sexual attraction. But a grey asexual, or anyone on the grey asexual part of the spectrum, can call themselves asexual if they want, because it is actually part of the spectrum. It's more the sexual end, because they still lack the usual sexual attraction that the majority of the population in the world experiences. And so that's how they can be part of the asexual spectrum. But it can be very difficult. I mean, some asexuals don't like any touching whatsoever. Some asexuals are very touch averse. They do not want any touching at all, and that can make life very difficult for them if they do, for example, want a relationship or even to interact with friends. They can find that hard as well. But touch averse is an actual thing. And going on to like asexuality in terms of like, is it the same as celibacy? It's not the same as celibacy. There are some asexuals that do identify as celibate as well as asexual, because they're refraining from having sex. And so they class themselves as both. But in general, celibacy is a choice that people decide to make because they, for one reason or the other, don't want the sex for a specific reason, like religious reasons, or because some people believe that by using their sexual energy all the time for sex, for example, that they're actually not as productive in life. And so there's this theory that if they retain their sexual energy and don't have sex, for example, or don't even masturbate, then they can use that sexual energy to be more productive in their life, and to better their life in other ways. So there's something called NoFap, which NOFAP, and NoFap is when people refrain from masturbating for a certain period of time, usually. And it's meant to be like a control thing. They're controlling themselves. They're not actually having sexual intercourse or masturbation. But these people in general are heterosexuals, for example, or a certain type of sexual, and they're doing it for that very specific reasons. They're not asexual. So someone who's abstaining or doing no fap is not an asexual person. They're just choosing to resist their sexual urges, to resist their own needs and desires and wants, as a form of controlling themselves in that way. Doesn't mean to say it's a bad thing they're doing that, but I have come across guys on dating sites that are into doing that, but it's temporary for them. So if you're a sex repulsed asexual who's interested in having a relationship with someone who's maybe refraining from having sex, doing the no fap, so spending 30 days or 90 days, for example, without sex, without masturbation, but then after that period, usually those people will go back to actually wanting sex and having it. And so they couldn't be in a long-term relationship with you without having sex. I've met guys on dating sites like this before. So you must be very careful. Like, don't get all excited. All they're on this no fap, or they're being celibate. Find out the origin of the celibacy. Why are they being celibate? What's the purpose of it? What's the plan? Are they always going to be like that? Is it something temporary? How are they finding it? Are they happy with it? Are they struggling with it? Again, impotency is not the same as asexuality. So asexuality isn't a choice, celibacy is a choice, impotency isn't a choice either, usually, because impotency is when the guy, for example, can't get an erection, so they can't physically have sex. It doesn't mean to say there aren't ways that they could have sex. There's a lot of products on the market which is supposed to cure impotency or help with it. And impotency is often brought on by things such as anxiety, depression, stress. So potentially, if those things were alleviated, they could then get it up to have sex again. So if you're on a dating app or dating site and you come across someone's impotent, see how sexually driven they are, because often they will still be very sexually driven. In fact, really highly, sometimes more than others, because they can't release that. And so their brain is wired in a highly sexual way, whereas us, we're wired in a highly unsexual way usually. Something that's difficult as well for some asexuals is to be part of LGBT plus. So LGBT plus QIA, the A stands for asexual, but some people think it stands for aromantic and agender as well. Now, being part of the acronym doesn't mean to say that everyone in the LGBT plus space actually accepts us, because LGBT people in general, they still sexually attracted to people, just their minority like we are. So that's how we come together, because we're all like a minority. But some asexuals feel left out in that community because that community still experiences sexual attraction, we don't. So they just experience it in a different way to heterosexuals because they're like the same gender or multiple genders, for example. So it's very important that we still get asexuality recognized in its own right, especially because heterosexuals won't know the difference if it's just clumped with LGBT. And so that's where I come in. That's my mission, to get it recognized as a sexual orientation globally in its own right, so that no asexual has to live in fear of ridicule ever again. That's why I do this channel. That's why I'm trying to get on a lot more podcasts to have a far-reaching audience, so people can begin to understand more and more about asexuality in more of the heterosexual space, if you like, the more of the traditional sexual space, because there's quite a lot of people that are doing work in the LGBT community, specifically with asexuality, but I don't feel there's enough people getting through to heterosexuals. It often comes from a channel where the person's gay, for example. A person is part of LGBT as well, because they're like a gay asexual, so they're like attracted to the same gender, or lesbian asexual attracted to the same gender. Obviously, lesbians and gays in general tend to experience sexual attraction, but some people still call themselves a lesbian or gay asexual. Other people hate those terms because they're like, I'm asexual, I'm not sexually attracted to anyone, so I'm not gay and I'm not lesbian. Right? But they might still be attracted to the opposite gender romantically, for example. And so it becomes a little bit complicated because different people identify different ways. But everyone is unique and different and special in their own right. And yes, we are part of the LGBT plus acronym, but it's very important we get asexuality recognized independently as well, because we can help to prevent rape situations and help to prevent sexual abuse situations by educating people that there are some people that definitely don't want sex in their life. And as a heteromantic asexual myself, I feel I'm very well placed to do that because I am hetero. So I don't completely fit into the LGBT space anyway, because I'm not lesbian, I'm not gay, I'm not bisexual, I'm not trans, I'm not any of those things. I am just the A. So I come from a background as well where I've predominantly had heterosexual relationships for over half of my life, pretty much. I had my first heterosexual relationship at 6 years old. So I do understand heterosexuals quite a lot and thought I was one for years, but I'm not, you know? And it's such a relief to find the asexual community. When you find the asexual community, it's like you've woken up to yourself and this big secret that everyone's been hiding, because most asexuals are underground, if you know what I mean. They're not visible because they're worried about what society thinks, their parents think, their family thinks, and they get scared. I don't get scared at all about stuff like that. I couldn't care less who knows. I want the whole world to know I'm asexual, because only when we have pride in our own sexual orientation can more and more people be confident in us that we're truly asexual, you know? Confidence breeds confidence. The more confident you are in your and of yourself, in your sexuality, which is asexuality, the more other people will be confident about you really being asexual. Because a lot of the time, you know, there's this thing in society where many people who are asexual are made to feel like they've got to, how can I put it, give evidence that they're asexual, and that's something I really don't like. It's like, why do you have to scientifically prove you're asexual? Why do you have to politically prove it? Why do you have to biologically prove it? There's a lot of other channels and podcasts and things that cover asexuality, and they cover it more politically. They cover it more scientifically. I'm not interested in that. It's like, I'm asexual. I don't need to have a test tube to prove I'm asexual. I don't need to have a textbook. I'm a living, breathing being who's asexual. That's all I need to know. That's enough. I need to prove who I am to anyone, because my value is within me. It's not within someone's own judgment or opinion of me and how things are, you know. And something that's very strange is when I talk to people about asexuality, the people that I find that are most uncomfortable with it, they start saying, "Oh, well, you like to label yourself, but you don't need to label yourself." And it's like they're uncomfortable with me saying I'm asexual, and that's why they say not to label myself. But then why is the majority of the population still labeling themselves as heterosexual? No one turns around to them and goes, "Well, you're labeling yourself as heterosexual. Why are you labeling yourself as heterosexual?" So it's kind of seen that if you're saying you're a certain type of asexual, you're labeling yourself. But if you're heterosexual, then it's just normal. And so that's what I don't like. It's almost like we're not normal by labeling ourselves asexual, but it's normal to label yourself heterosexual. And it's like, oh, you're choosing to use that label as if you're sticking the sticker on yourself and just saying you're asexual when maybe you're not. And so that's what's difficult, because I'm in a space where I'm increasingly gaining, like gaining views and momentum for asexuals, but still coming up against this labeling idea. But I've noticed usually it's by people who are uncomfortable with asexuality. They feel uncomfortable about it. They if they find it harder to accept it. And to me, I just see it as a reflection of them being unsure or uncomfortable with it. And so instead of accepting I'm asexual, they're choosing then to have kind of a bit of a frown upon the fact I'm labeling myself, or they're using the word label as in I'm just giving myself a title, just like a sticky label, which could fall off at any minute. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so I find that very difficult. Some of these people, I admire their work they do, or the life that they're creating for themselves as their entrepreneur type of person. But I do not like someone when they start talking about, oh, you're just labeling yourself. It doesn't feel nice to me. It's like like I said, it's like a sticky label you stuck on your chest or something to say you're something. It could fall off at any time. That's what a label is basically like and represents, if you know what I mean, to me. And it's like, I'm permanently asexual. It's not something I've chosen and tried on for size, like a jacket or a coat or a blazer or a pair of pants or something. It's a genuine sexual orientation. It's not like something I'm playing with or fantasizing about, or just calling myself temporarily. It's not a phase. And heterosexuals don't go through all this. They don't go through all this. oh, you're just labeling yourself, oh, you need to prove scientifically that that heterosexuality exists, and just because a person has a penis and another person has a vagina and they stick it in each other and have a baby doesn't mean that they're heterosexual necessarily. There's people who are gay or lesbian that still have babies. You know what I mean? It doesn't define their sexuality really, but it's seen by society as heterosexual is normal, so they don't go around saying, "Well, why are you labeling yourself heterosexual?" But oftentimes I feel like I wanna say that. I wanna say, "Well, why do you label yourself as heterosexual? What's the point?" Because they're sexually attracted to someone. Why do I label myself as asexual, or why do I know I'm asexual? Because I'm not sexually attracted to anyone. So it's definitions, not really labels, in my opinion. Some asexuals, however, go on to the topic of labels. Some asexuals don't like to label themselves at all. They'll say labels are for soup cans. And yeah, that's up to the individual asexual whether they want to label themselves or not. But I just see it as an identity. And yes, some identities do shift over time when you realize that maybe you're not exactly what you thought you were. Or maybe you've changed slightly, developed, got different characteristics in terms of your sexual orientation. But by and large, most people have an idea of if they're asexual or not asexual, at least on the asexual spectrum. Heather, asexual is real. It's true. Yeah. It is rare. Asexual is rare. Oh, asexual is real, but it is rare, says Heather. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's meant to be a recorded 1% of the population. So in a study done years ago by a psychologist, and it is very real. It's very real. It's not something that is a disease or an illness or that needs to be cured or fixed. I had a guy on a dating site the other day say to me, "Oh, is there something you can take for that to change it?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a disease or an illness. There's nothing wrong. It needs fixing. I like being asexual. I like the fact I don't like sex, and it's natural." And it's like, "Oh, it's natural for some people." I'm like, "Yes, it's natural for some people to not experience sexual attraction, to be like this, like me, asexual. It's natural for some people to be like that." And they find it really hard to wrap their head around it. Most people who are heterosexual find it very difficult to contemplate the fact that it's natural for some people to not want sex because they're so conditioned. It's just conditioning from birth that, oh, everyone naturally wants sex. I hear it all the time from like dating coaches as well, other dating coaches, not me, who's an asexual dating coach. I hear it all the time from people. Oh, it's natural to have sex. Everyone wants sex. But it's simply not true. And there's lots of people in the world that aren't even calling themselves asexual or don't identify as asexual or not asexual that are not even having sex. Not every single minute of every single day do even heterosexuals think about sex. There are some that have high sex drives and they think about sex a lot. But, there's going to be times when they don't. And it is rare, which does rare, in terms of the general population. But if you think 1 in every 100 people you meet is like to be asexual, that's quite a lot. Asexual isn't a trendy thing, it's a real thing. Yes, Heather, thank you. Lots of love to you. Yes, it's not a trendy thing, it's a real thing with real people's lives at stake and involved, with real people's feelings. And I find it so difficult on dating sites when they just don't get the fact that asexuality and people who are asexual, like myself, sex repulsed, want an actual relationship permanently, forever, sex free. And they just think that I want a friendship and they don't understand. They're like, well, what do you want? So to them, you either be friends, often they want friends with benefits, or you have sex and have a relationship. They don't have this in their mind that they could have a serious, committed, long-term life partnership without sex ever. It doesn't compute in their head. And so they get confused about, like, what do you want? Oh, so you just want a friend? Fine, I'll be your friend. But often they don't really want friendship, obviously. They want friends with benefit scenario, whether that's an emotional benefit, mental benefit, or physical benefit. They want some sort of benefit to them with it. And a lot of the time, I just don't end up carrying on the conversation with those guys because it's wasting my time. You're wasting your time if you have someone who clearly cannot live without sex and you're interested in a relationship or find a relationship with someone. You're just wasting your time because they want completely different things for you and completely different things with you than you want. And it's just going to end up in disaster and pain. And some people will take your time up and they'll continuously take it because they're very selfish and they don't care about you. All they care about is getting their fix. There's a lot of guys online that like to have emotional validation and like to be idolized and like to have someone message them all the time for an ego boost, and this is not good, but it happens. So you've got to value your own time and space and energy. And if the person isn't a good fit for what you want, you've got to let them go because there's absolutely no point in carrying on. And it is sad that more people in the world can't live without sex. I understand it's an innate need and desire that a lot of heterosexuals have, and they can't live without it. But it's sad there's not more people that can, because I know there's bound to be some in the world that are, sad about the fact they don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and they may wish they just had someone and they could live without sex. But it's harder to find those people, and they could change their mind. But asexuality is a good thing to be because there are lots of benefits to being asexual. There's when you're not having sex, for example, if you're an asexual that doesn't have sex, you have less chance of catching sexually transmitted diseases, less chance of catching sexually transmitted infections, less chance of getting anything like that. If you're asexual who's sex repulsed, doesn't have sex, you haven't got all the messiness to deal with. Sex is quite messy. There's a lot of bodily fluids involved. It can get quite yucky and messy. Also, it can be time consuming as well. You can have to put a lot of effort in. Some women, for example, find it very painful, particularly women in general find it painful quite a bit. If there's no lubrication, that can really, really hurt. Also, just because you have sex with someone doesn't mean to say they're actually going to be in a serious committed relationship with you or stay with you. There's a lot of guys that want hookups. And so even if you're an asexual that might consider having sex at some point, I still say to wait till you're actually in a serious committed relationship rather than give your body away to someone who really doesn't give a shit about you. They might act like they give a shit about you to get what they want and then go. And it feels like a rejection, abandonment. They couldn't care less. And so if you're an asexual that does want to try sex, you should hold back that part of you to keep it for someone who really does care about you. There's a lot of ghosting that goes on dating apps as well, where you can get someone who's really keen on you. Like I had someone earlier today who seemed really, well, yesterday now, seemed really interested in me, but I thought he'd read my bio. But the last message I sent, I said, and I am asexual though. Have you read my bio? And then he's just like not speaking to me anymore, as far as I know now, unless he decides to message me tomorrow out of the blue or something. But it's like, it's like these people should be reading your bio, right? So when you're asexual, I highly recommend putting in your bio on dating sites and dating apps very upfront, I'm asexual. And if you're sex repulsed, I don't like sex. Just be blunt about it, open and honest, because there's absolutely no point in getting involved with someone who does want sex if you don't. You're going to have a very upset and painful life doing that, right? Don't wait till they've got to know you first. That's not fair to you and it's not fair to them. Be upfront about it. Say you're asexual. And if it puts people off you, good, because they're never right for you in the first place, right? If someone can't accept you for who you are, it's no good. And it's better to be upfront honest so that you are not accused of leading that person on and they're not thinking they're wasting their time if they're into sex and you're not, right? And vice versa. Don't waste each other's time. So be honest, upfront, and open about your asexuality, but just know there are people that lie and say, well, I'm asexual too, or I don't need sex. It's sad, but these people do exist in the world. So you have to keep your wits about you. You have to think, do they really mean that? Because if they start talking about sexual stuff with you, then they don't really mean it. If they start asking you sexual questions and they said they don't like sex or could live without it, they don't really mean it because their brain is thinking about sex, and sex is like to a lot of sex repulsed asexuals very disgusting. Some asexuals get physically sick at even the idea of having sex, let alone taking part in it. Some asexuals that have admittedly took part in it basically throw up afterwards. That's how much they hate sex and are repulsed by it. So you have to understand that asexuality is a huge spectrum, from those that are touch adverse, don't want romance, not interested in sex, rather keep their bodies and all their bits to themselves, going up to the extreme sexual end of the asexual spectrum, where they're kind of like got sex on their mind. They do want to try sex, they do want to have sex at some point, and they do experience sexual attraction under limited, rare, or specific circumstances. So it's such a diverse spectrum. And sometimes the sex repulsed asexuals feel like the ones that aren't sex repulsed do the asexuality, how can I put it? It makes asexuality look like it's not real sometimes, or it's not exactly how it used to be, because traditionally, like I said earlier, asexuality is very much based on a lack of sexual attraction, a lack of need or desire to have kind of sexual contact, sexual stuff going on. And so some sex repulsed asexuals can feel very left out, because there's quite a lot there's quite a lot of sexual, how can I put this? There's quite a lot of asexuals that are on the more sexual end of the spectrum that are very vocal. I find that these people tend to be more extroverted, more vocal, more more able to express themselves, and more able to have a loud voice. Whereas the sex repulsed asexuals, because I'm in some sex repulsed groups on Facebook, for example, they can just feel like really left out and really upset. It's like they feel like some of the more sexual end of the asexual spectrum, asexuals are kind of making it difficult for them. Maybe they feel like it's a bit of a mockery, because it's like you're there saying, "Oh, I really like sex," but it's like they're genuinely pure asexuals, if you know what I mean. So that can be like quite difficult in the community. I would always be very wary about someone if they talked about sex a lot when they're asexual. I'd always be very careful. Are they really asexual? Doesn't mean to say they're not, but I would explore where the motive is coming from, because you can get people who are scammers that come into the asexual community. They're not really asexual. Some admit it to me as well, so you've got to be very careful, because some people and even some articles on asexuality will say, oh, if the label fits, wear it. Like, if you think you're asexual, just say you're asexual. But the danger of being so loose with asexuality as a sexual orientation is like, oh, well, welcome everyone. Everyone can, and anyone can join. And then you've got kind of like no regulation of asexuality. And so you've got like people that come into the asexual community, some of whom are definitely not asexual, and they're just kind of like worming their way in to asexuality and asexual groups. Some of these people are very bad, actually. There's some people who come in that are actually the opposite of asexuals. They're pedophiles. I've known of a couple like that. And I'm not going to say their names, obviously, but there's people that have come in the community and hidden themselves from what they truly are. One of them I used to see in person at my meetups, and I was absolutely shocked that they were like that. I had no idea. But I'm just telling you this to make you aware that not everyone in the asexual community is actually asexual. And so it's difficult, because there are people that are slam down gatekeepers. Like, you can't gatekeep who's asexual, who's not, but you do still have to have your wits about you, and have to have some safeguarding yourself, like with any situation, with any people, to use and trust your own judgment. Like, judgment can be used in a bad way, like you're judging as in you're critical of everyone all the time, or judgment can be a very good thing where you're protecting yourself. You're taking this person for what they say and what they do. Is it the same? How much are they contradicting themselves? If I had someone in my inbox go, oh, I really want sex, I think about it a lot, but I'm asexual, I would question whether they are asexual, because it depends the frequency of how much they think about it. Do they think about doing it with an actual person, or is it just a fantasy of theirs? Is it just some sort of whim and they don't really want to do it in real life? like, you need to ask more questions. But, there are some people that aren't actually asexual that come into the community and they haven't got very good intentions. They're hiding who they truly are. Doesn't happen very often. I don't want to scare you. It doesn't happen very often. There are a lot of people who are genuinely asexual. But, you got to be careful. I mean, I usually vet people come into my groups. And when I see someone who has highly sexual women on their Facebook page, yet they're saying they're asexual, I do question whether they genuinely are asexual. It depends on the pictures, how many people they've got, the reason for it. Sometimes I will question them, like, why have you got sexual pictures? And other times I just will decline their entry to my group. But you can sometimes find that these things crop up on people's profiles after they've joined the group and you didn't realize they were like that. So it's difficult because there are a percentage of asexuals that do like looking at naked bodies. They like looking at it as an art form. So they don't see it as a sexual thing as well. So it's very difficult because you can't tell someone outright you're not asexual usually, but there are people that aren't asexual if you find out they're not, if you know what I mean. So, use your wits about you and use your own judgment and trust it, because we want to keep the asexual community safe. And I usually do, I believe that if you think you're asexual, you should explore it first before declaring you're asexual. I think, like, it's used very loosely a lot of the time in asexual articles. I've read that, "Oh, yeah, if it fits, just, like, use the label." And, this is done so casually. It's like, are you not taking it seriously as an orientation? Like, since when do we go around, "All right, well, if you think you're, like, heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, just, like, basically just label yourself as it." The way it's said is that it's kind of, to me, like a flippant way. It's not said in a, like, meaningful way. I would always say, like, explore asexuality first, learn a bit about it, and then if you think you're asexual, then call yourself asexual. But at least learn about it. Don't just think, "Oh, this word asexual, like sexual attraction, I'm not feeling sexual attraction at the moment, I'll just stick it on there." You need to, like, actually take it in. And, like, some people will recognize they're asexual straight away. They'll be like, "Oh, that sounds like me. That's it. Let's go for it," because I know that's what I truly am. But there's other people that might need to explore it more, and I don't think you should just be using asexuality to fit in. I think you should be asexual if you are asexual and tell the world you're asexual and enjoy that, if you are. So you should be what you are, not become what you think you want to be. Because I had some people are like, "Oh, how can I make myself asexual?" And I'm like, you can't make yourself be asexual. It's something you're usually born like and don't realize it till later on in your life. But if you look back at your life and thinking past boyfriends, like, one of you ever had a boyfriend or whatever gender, like, have you had a girlfriend, have you had a partner, basically, if you've been in a relationship, one of the telltale signs that you're asexual is you might not have ever had a relationship before in your whole life. You may have not even felt an innate need to have a relationship like a lot of other people do. These are signs you might be asexual. If you've never ever looked at someone in your childhood, for example, teen years, and particularly teen years, right? Because when we're children, we don't really think about sex so much, but early teens, like to late teens, have you ever, like, looked at someone and think, "Oh, I want sex with that person," or was it all like romance, for example, and holding hands or kissing, or just you want to sit and talk to them? And then, like, going through the years, like, have you, like, felt an urge in your body to, like, be sexual with that person? Or if you got any urges that just really in yourself where you could pleasure yourself and you don't really need anyone else? These are the type of things that you need to explore within yourself. If you're a person that's never really had a partner or not many, and you never really thought, "Oh, I want someone for sex," you might be asexual. Asexuals come in all different types, like I've said, but there are some telltale signs. Like, if you've never thought about being in a romantic relationship, for example, and you don't experience sexual attraction, maybe you're aromantic asexual. If you're a person that's never really pursued a relationship because you find it a bit scary, the sex thing, you might be asexual in that case. If you're a person that hasn't got an interest in sex, right, little to no interest in sexual activities is what part of the definition of asexuality is. The full Wikipedia definition is lack of sexual attraction and or little to no interest in sexual activities. If you have little to no interest in sexual activities, it's highly likely you're probably asexual, because someone who's asexual, like a pure asexual, you can get two types of pure asexuals. One that doesn't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever, and another one that doesn't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever and doesn't want any sexual touching whatsoever as well. Whereas you can get some pure asexuals, they have no sexual attraction, but they still want to do some physical sexual touching. A lot of the time it might be sensual for them rather than sexual though. I have sensual attraction where I want to stroke the guy's upper body, stroke his arms, stroke his hair, cuddle him, that type of thing. That's sensual for me. It's a very loving, sensual experience. But some guys who are sexual will probably get turned on by that, and for them, it's like a sexual thrill type thing. So I think you always have to look at yourself and how you feel as sexual feelings. Like, I assess myself even now when I'm kissing guys. I assess, like, am I experiencing arousal? It's like, no. And it's more and more obvious every time I kiss a guy that I'm definitely asexual because I just don't get that need for sex. I don't get that want. I don't get the urge. I don't experience arousal much these days through kissing a guy. It's really weird. I probably experience more arousal feelings when I'm on my own, maybe thinking about kissing afterwards, but not actually with the guy. I get excited by kissing the guy, but not actually arousal. So that's a very interesting observation of how my body's changed over the years, in regards to other people. Like asexuals, like I said, can feel very kind of like interested in themselves, like more interested physically in themselves than someone else. They can want to masturbate, want to touch themselves, want to engage in sexual activities more with themselves if they're that way inclined than other people. So like I said, some asexuals have a sex drive, but it's if they have sexual desire and a sex drive, they would desire the sex itself, but they've got no one that they desire that with, if you understand what I mean. It doesn't go anywhere. It's like a car and it's going along a road and then it ends. It like shuts the headlights off, if you know what I mean. It doesn't carry on. And so it doesn't carry on to its destination. It's like stopped in mid flow. It's like I'm all right where I am with myself, That's kind of what it's like. But growing up, I remember thinking about a guy when I was 15. I was really liking this guy, and he was clean shaven, actually, short dark hair. I got a pattern from even teens of liking this type of look. British though he was, as far as I know, he might not have been thinking about it. But I was really interested and really attracted to him. And I just used to think, oh, I want to hold his hand and kiss him. That's all I used to think. I never thought about sex at all. And if you never think about sex, you're highly likely going to be asexual. So always reflect on your own behavior, reflect on your own thoughts and emotions. Sexual attraction is a desire and a need, and like, oh, I really want to do that now. I really want to do it. You know what I mean? I have a kissing need, but I really want to kiss right now, So heterosexuals get that need, but excitement, but with sex, I get that need excitement with kissing. Like, I really need to kiss now. Really need to kiss now. Where is a suitable place to get kissing from? You know what I mean? I'm a hyper kisser though, which is not normal. So I have strong kissing needs. So I guess it's good in terms of I can understand why heterosexuals need sex because I have an innate need for kissing so much. And it's like a really big physical kissing need I have, and an innate need and desire that I've got to have that. And I could not be in a relationship without that. So I do understand heterosexuals who need sex in a relationship. Having said that, I feel sorry for us asexuals that there's not more heterosexuals that could live without sex and could, for example, just deal with the masturbating themselves side of the relationship rather than having to have sex. But it is what it is, like, we are different. I hope that every asexual person that wants a relationship finds another suitable asexual. I got such niche needs that it's very difficult for me to find that. And it's very difficult for other people who are asexual who want a relationship to find a suitable person because we're all spread out all over the globe. We all have different needs in terms of the amount of touching we like, don't like, the amount of kissing we like, don't like. we need to have stuff in common, and we could have completely different ideology of what a lifestyle would look like. Some asexuals might like hiking and camping and doing lots of outdoor activities, and other asexuals might be artsy and craftsy and want to stay in all the time and do that. Some asexuals, a lot of asexuals, majority in fact, is introverted, and quite a lot of the time they're so introverted they like to spend a lot of time indoors. I'm extrovert, so I'm kind of different in that way. So that makes it harder as well. So you got lots of different personality types going on, lots of different wants, needs, desires. Compatibility, therefore, can be very difficult, even among asexual community, like meeting the right asexual for you. So it does pose a lot of difficulties, but I would not change being asexual for the world. Like some people I've heard ask, oh, so if you could change your sexuality and not be asexual anymore, stay asexual, which would you choose? Obviously, this can't really happen because you can't choose to be asexual, not asexual. You just are if you are, right? But if someone gave me the option to be heterosexual or asexual, I'd still want to be asexual, even though I find it hard to get a relationship. I don't want to be a heterosexual. I thought I was for years, and I just like don't want that anymore. I don't see the benefit of having, well, if someone's heterosexual, they have sexual urges and sexual attraction. I don't see the benefit of that at all. In fact, I think it's harder if you're single and you've got that going on. I have kissing needs going on. So sexual attraction is really hard if they're single, which is why a lot of them hook up. But I would always choose to be asexual. I love having a sex-free life. I think it's really good. No chance of pregnancy, which I adore because I never want to be pregnant in my life. And it's kind of like a lot more happier life. I can go dancing, do kissing without the sex, and sex is messy and I'm not into it really, and I'd rather do without it. And these days I can't have it because I just physically can't bring myself to do that anymore. And that's how I found out I was asexual in part, because I went to a counselor and said I can't bring myself to have sex anymore. And she said you'd have to have sex in order to keep a good guy. And I was just so horrified. But if I hadn't been horrified and she hadn't said that the way she did, I probably would not have gone home and Googled, I love kissing, but not sex, and found out I'm asexual. So sometimes when bad things happen or difficult things happen in life, it can actually lead to the most amazing good thing. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you for now. Thank you so much for being in chat tonight. I've had a great time with you all. Thanks to Anok. Thanks to John. Nice to see you here. And thanks to Heather. Lots of love to you all. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to grab your copy of Asexual Perspectives on Amazon. That pretty much answers all these questions that we've been discussing in this live stream or on replay. If you're watching it on replay, it pretty much answers all the questions and discusses all the topics in here, but from the perspective of 47 asexuals in total. So it's good because it gives loads of different perspectives, not just mine. And so, yeah, grab a copy of that. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Waterstone, Blackwell's, even Walmart you can get it from. So go and grab a copy now. It's very insightful. Don't forget to leave a review, please, if you like the book and enjoy it. And I'll see you soon next video live stream. Lots of love to you. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Happy Ace Pride. Bye.